Is there anything more glamorous than champagne? I mean, if there's anything worth celebrating in life, it's gotta be with champagne, right? From Hollywood to Wall Street, from golf to Formula One. And if you're out partying in the big cities, of course you need bottle service at the clubs. But how much of champagne is just marketing, and how much is the quality of winemaking? In today's episode of Our Poor Decisions, we're looking at both big brands and grower champagnes. What makes them different, and how does it affect your purchasing decisions?
Hi wine lovers, welcome to another episode of Our Poor Decisions.
In today's episode is all about champagne.
This is really in your wheelhouse, isn't it, B?
I love the glitz and the glam, and I'm not gonna deny that.
So what is it that makes champagne so appealing to you?
Well, it's light, refreshing, I love the tiny little bubbles, and it tastes really good to me.
So what about the brand?
Depends, am I the one paying for it?
I figured you'd say something like that. All right, so today we're putting Dom and Cristal to the test. In addition, we have two grower champagnes, and as we go through the tasting, we'll explain the differences to you. Today, we'll be tasting 4 champagnes. 2 of the bottles are big brand champagnes, Moet and Chandon's Dom Perignon and Roederer's Cristal. These are some of the biggest brands associated with luxury lifestyles. The other 2, well, they're grower champagnes. Goutorbe Special Club Grand Cru and Pierre Moncuit Grand Cru. These are much smaller champagne houses who grow their own grapes. And whereas the big brands each retail for around $300, the Grand Cru grower champagnes can be had for as little as $100.
So Dom and Cristal, they're 3 times as expensive as the other 2 grower champagnes we're trying today.
Yeah, and I think it's a big deal, and we should keep that in mind as we taste the champagnes.
That seems like a really big price difference, especially if maybe I would be the one paying for it.
Well, we've talked about price being a function of scarcity on other shows. Think about Domaine Romanée Conti or Pappy, for instance. That's really not the case here. Even though the champagne houses don't publicize the annual production, it is said that Dom Perignon is making like 5 million bottles a year. This is really a lot more about luxury branding.
So the price is a reflection on brand exclusivity and marketing?
Exactly. You might even say that if it was less expensive, it wouldn't be as attractive.
Well, that makes sense considering the same company owns Louis Vuitton. Anyways, can we just start the tasting already? Because I'm thirsty and I've waited all day for this.
Okay, so we're gonna do a background segment on champagne first. Then we're gonna bring Stacey in here and help us along with the tasting and explain really what we're experiencing. When most of us use the word champagne, we usually refer to the drink. However, the Champagne AOC is of course a wine growing region in the northeast France that spans about 180 miles across, with 280,000 plots of land dedicated to mostly Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. There are 16,000 growers in Champagne, and in contrast to the classifications in Burgundy and Bordeaux, the Premier and Grand Cru classifications in Champagne are assigned to the village level, not to the vineyards, and specifically tied to a historical pricing system set up to deal with the great powers of the large champagne houses against the small, often poor growers. It's also worth noting that it's been historically challenging to grow quality grapes north of the 50th degree parallel, and the Reims and Épernay, the epicenters of Champagne, are located at the 49.5 and 49th degree north respectively. This means that Champagne historically has been more susceptible to adverse weather conditions than regions further south, which explains the practices of blending vintages to achieve consistent wines.
Welcome, Stacey. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. Thanks for having me again.
And you know, normally I'm the one who's so excited about these tastings, but guess what?
This one's excited now. I love it.
I am.
Who's not excited to taste champagne?
I know, right? It's so glamorous, so much fun. And today we're gonna try 2 of the biggest brand names, but we're also gonna try them against 2 of the grower champagnes.
This is kind of fun and exciting. Champagne is all of the story of the blend, right? And it's kind of interesting to get to try 2 different tiers, 2 different levels, 2 different directions.
Before we even started the tasting, do you want to give us a lesson on how to properly open a champagne bottle?
I totally do. I love opening champagne, and it intimidates some people, but the more you practice, the easier it gets.
All right, well, let's get to it.
all my tips and tricks for opening bottles of champagne. You know, if you're serving it at a table, you want to show them the label first, but for you, just you and me, I'm going to keep you seeing the label. Don't set it down ever. You want to hang on to this bottle the whole time. Every champagne bottle has a little tab at it right there. See it? Mm-hmm. That you can grab and pull. We will get all that foil off. So you want to, once you release the cage, always have your grip on both top and bottom, right?
Okay.
And I put my thumb over the top and I grip the bottle.
Yeah.
So when you pull this little flange down, it twists 6 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 every time. I tend to leave the cage on the cork because it gives me something to grip onto. I grab the cork and honestly, with all of that pressure, I push. I'm trying to make less noise.
Okay.
So I hold the cork and I twist the bottle. And all you gotta do is twist it around and that's going to create, and we're gonna point it away from each other. And at 45 degrees, oh hey, look at you. So you push against it because you want it to be quiet. I've heard it described as a nun's fart.
Oh.
As an angel whisper. Whichever of those you prefer, but that quiet little psh is all you want to hear. There you go.
I tried to get that fart, but
So when I feel it start to come out, I don't do anything but push back. I'm trying to keep it from coming out.
you're making me look bad.
Years of practice.
Hey, good job on the opening of the champagne, B.
Thank you. No black eyes over here.
No flying corks. Everything worked out well.
Oh, I've put corks in the ceiling, and
It's kind of part of the fun of it to make it a little bit rowdy. But
I already noticed that after we poured the champagnes, there are some color differences.
that could be attributed to the amount of Pinot Noir that's in each one. Could be part of how long it's aging on the lees, whether they had micro-oxygenation in oak with that first fermentation. There's tons of reasons there could be more color here.
All right, so we're not doing this blind today. I wanted to see what difference the dosage was, and I wanted to taste it in the sequence. I really don't know much about champagne. What do you look for in champagne?
Oh man. There are so many places to start that conversation. There is a champagne for everyone, I think. There are crazy dry ones with less than 3 grams or less sugar. There are crazy sweet ones with 50 grams and up. And then there's everything in between. So what do you like? Do you want to taste something dry? What are you pairing it with? Is it for your first course, your second course? Is it going with the beef and the lamb? Is it here for dessert? The producers are always interesting too. You've got the big guys who are producing things like Dom from Moet or Cristal from Roederer, or the smaller producers who are growing their own grapes on their own estate and making hundreds of bottles instead of hundreds of thousands of bottles.
Yeah, or millions of bottles.
Or millions. And you know, again, neither one of those is necessarily better than the other. It's just different. What are you looking for?
B is kicking me under the table. She's like, can we get started already?
My mouth is watering just talking about it.
Well, let's start.
Pierre Moncuit Grand Cru Champagne traces its roots back to 1889, when Alex Moncuit acquired a few acres in the village of Menil-sur-Oger. In 1928, his son Pierre started producing wine under his own name. Of course, it wasn't until 1985 that Menil-sur-Oger received Grand Cru status. Did you smell it just like regular wine?
It is regular wine. And it's got bubbles, for sure. But you can treat it like regular wine in your tasting and your pairing notes and the care that they're giving it and the terroir that it's coming from. So yeah, look at the color, look at the bubbles, and then give it a big whiff.
And this is why we also taste it in a tulip glass as opposed to...
The flute.
The flute, yeah.
The flute is definitely like a trick of marketing, right? It's like what looks pretty, it has all the bubbles, but you can't smell anything in that little flute.
It smells really good.
And if you don't have these pretty champagne glasses at home, a white wine glass works too.
So a few weeks ago,
Yes.
we had the most fascinating champagne I've ever tasted. Do you remember, B?
Yeah, I do.
So we tried Jacques Solos.
Yes.
I still don't know how I feel about it. Did you like it?
I did like it.
There was something about the oxidized nose that just, I don't know, they call it reductive oxidized. You know, just there was something about it that was just so weird.
Well, it made an impression because 3 weeks later, you're still talking about it. So.
3 weeks later, I'm still talking about it. And here's the thing. On the nose of Moncuit, I just get a hint of that.
Kind of weird craziness.
Yes.
Yeah. I get like creamy banana notes too. There's like a, almost like ginger cookies and banana.
This is very complex.
Well,
Yeah.
let's try it.
Yeah, let's
All
do
right.
that. Cheers
Cheers.
to that.
Cheers. That's good. For something that's extra brute, it doesn't really taste as dry as I was thinking it was going to taste.
So 2012 was a crazy vintage. It started out just nuts. It was super cold, then it was crazy rainy, then everything dried up and it was crazy hot. There was almost water stress at the end of the season, which is nuts when there was like torrential downpours in the beginning. If you took care of your vines in the vineyard, the grapes that came out of 2012 were amazing. And a lot of them, because of that crazy heat wave in the middle, were super, super ripe. So you almost don't even have to add a lot of sugar. The ripeness and the flavor is coming from the fruit. The dosage is just like, let me balance that out for you a little bit.
I thought that this was really quite rich. Did not expect that.
Yeah.
Like this could stand up to more
This
hearty food almost.
Heartier food, fried things, like your fish and chips even, something that's got some like fat and weight to it.
What do you think, B?
I don't know. I just like it. It tastes good. I have to try the other ones maybe to compare it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's do it. Moet and Chandon, which is owned by LVMH, is the biggest champagne house of them all, with an estimated annual production of 30 million bottles and 17 miles worth of underground tunnels in Epernay. The Dom Perignon brand was launched in 1937 with the 1921 vintage wine. The brand, of course, pays homage to the 17th century Benedictine monk, Dom Perignon, who did much for the improvement of the quality of champagne production. Today, we're tasting the base Dom Perignon. There are P2, P3, special releases, and artist releases. And yeah, you'd be hard-pressed to find a brand more closely linked with luxury champagne. Annual production is said to be about 5 million bottles. Yes, you heard that correctly. 5 million.
Ooh, get fancy with it.
Radically different nose.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy?
Totally different.
Like, not even in the same family.
It's kind of like, I don't know. It smells like meteor. I don't know how to explain
kind of
that.
does. This had way more like fruit and ginger. Complex, but like brighter. This is almost like masculine and
See, I
fascinating.
think this is smells more like just what I would get from a Chardonnay.
Is it true that the smaller the bubble, the nicer the champagne?
So typically it also means that it was aged longer. So better, different flavor profiles. You know, it's got more time for that Maillard reaction, which is what happens when the lees and all that good yeasty, doughy stuff reacts with the sugar and the dosage, and you get that brioche toasty note. So the longer you get into that realm, the smaller and tighter the bubbles are, and the more they're like integrated with the wine.
Okay. Well, I've always wanted to know that. I don't know about you guys.
So this is the regular Dom Perignon, which they say is kind of 7 to 8 years after the harvest, the first plenitude. And then they, of course, have the P2, the P3, and other releases as well. I'm really curious how this is going to taste compared to the first one, because I thought the first was really complex. Cheers.
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 I wonder if this was disgorged later, because it has so many more of those like brioche notes to it.
To me, this tastes a little more watery than the other one.
Yeah,
It's not as rich,
it's not as rich.
but it's really got great flavor. Maybe a little bit more refreshing. Totally see this with a bottle of champagne on this cafe in Paris in the summer months and be
Paint the picture. I love it.
totally glamorous,
Totally happy.
right?
Is this a trip you're planning for us?
I kind of like the first one.
I kind of like the first one too.
Especially when you know the price difference. It's like, I feel like you're almost getting more flavor in the first one than Dom Perignon.
They intentionally, it's always a vintage, right? It's their tête de cuvée for Moet. It is always something they want you to age for at least 10 years. We've got one that's like 12, so that's a great start, but this wine can go on. So it's always nice to try it here and think, I wonder if this is gonna just get better and better. And that's what the P2 and the P3 are all about, is like re-releases of older vintages.
I am ready to move on to Cristal.
Yeah, okay.
I am curious now now, like with the difference in the first two, I'm really dying to see how
See
the
the
last
Cristal?
two. Yeah.
So Cristal's got the best story.
Louis Roederer remains one of the few last independent champagne houses. The modern legacy starts with Louis Roederer, who inherited the family business in 1833 and went on to reinvent the champagne business altogether, and along the way acquired some of the finest vineyards in Champagne. The Cristal label was created for Tsar Alexander II in 1876 and became the champagne of choice 100 years later at Studio 54 in New York City. It then became the drink of choice for the hip-hop community, only to later be boycotted in 2006. Annual production is said to be between 300 and 400,000 bottles, less than 1/10 of Dom Perignon. I can't wait to try this. B?
Cheers.
And it smells different.
Oh, well, I want to smell it first.
You're allowed.
All right, I'm eager. Sue me.
Wow.
Yeah, every one of them's different. I love champagne.
This kind of smells like old person's house a little bit.
Oh, come on, B. No, it does not.
Like in a floral potpourri way, or like a musty way. What do you? Tell me more. Old person's house, how?
Like a mix.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're not smelling this? Cheers.
Cheers.
That's probably maybe the most aesthetic one in my opinion.
Man, it is definitely mouthwatering, isn't it?
I would say, without a doubt, that has the most acidity.
Mm-hmm.
That
There's
has
almost like a green, like fruity, kiwi, limey kind of thing to it.
I'm just glad that you guys agree that it had the most acidity. That was a win for me.
And it really is surprising to know that it has significantly more sugar added than the Moncuit.
Yes.
And there's no sign of that whatsoever.
Also, I don't know that they went through malolactic fermentation with this. So like the creaminess that we got in these two, that probably did go through some mallow.
That would make total sense. Our last champagne of the evening is the 2012 Goutorbe Special Club Grand Cru Champagne. If you hadn't heard of Moncuit and Goutorbe champagnes prior to watching this episode, just know that neither had I. Grower champagnes are different from the big houses in that they produce only champagne from their own vineyards. The quantities are far smaller and reflective of the terroir, which is otherwise a meaningless concept in large-scale champagne production. The Goutorbe family includes generational vine nurserymen, but the current winery was established in 1970.
The Special Club is literally an invite-only club that has been around for, since the 70s. And there are like 3 original members, and Goutorbe is one of them. Basically,
That sounds so French. Like, we're gonna let only a couple in, like first growth Class A, Grand Cru Class
exactly.
A, and nobody else can get in.
and everyone else who's not in is going to riot about it.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
also super French. The champagne riots are a real thing. Look it up. It's fascinating. Their tête de cuvée is the one that they offer up for the Special Club. It gets blind tasted twice. If it passes all the tests and everyone in the Special Club decides this vintage is good enough to declare a vintage, then you can make a bottling of it.
That is so cool.
Especially because it's way cheaper than Dom and Cristal, but it had to go through all of these like accolades.
Right? Well, the marketing budget is part of what you're paying for here too. You know, not that these wines aren't delicious, but everyone knows who they are.
All right, and B, can we not use the word cheap when we're still paying more than $100 a bottle?
Yeah. Keep in mind, these are all out of my budget, so I don't even know why I'm talking. So I was thinking this kind of smelled like the Madeira that we tried.
It does have a little bit of like salty, savory nuttiness to it, right? And that, like, again, is part of that Maillard reaction where the lees and the yeast are reacting with that sugar and you get that really like savory, buttery, nutty kind of thing.
One of the things that's clearly at play here is that the big conglomerates are trying to make very consistent products, right? You need to know that it's a Dom, you need to know that it's a Cristal. But the grower champagne houses, they can really have a much wider variety in how. So if we were to taste the Moncuit and the Goutorbe in a different vintage, they might be quite different.
So that's a really great point. The big houses are aiming for the same style. So like Dom, Roederer, when you are looking at Veuve Clicquot, you see that orange yellow label, that is consistency, it's product, it's gonna taste like that every time you get it. But to do that, it's a non-vintage blend. Typically, they're blending across vintages, varietals, vineyards, all of it to make this style. They even keep reserve wine back to make sure that every time you pop that bottle, it's the house style. Every time I open that bottle, it's gonna be the same. The smaller guys are doing it all from their own estate. They're not buying fruit from anybody else, so they are way more at the mercy of the vintage. They're way more at the mercy of what happens in their specific estate. And so you get a very different view with the big guys who are doing those big blends and giving you a consistent style versus this is what happened in my backyard this year.
This is why we wanted to have all 4 champagnes the same year. We didn't want to mix years because that would really kind of change the whole thing.
It's too many variables.
Yeah, it's too many variables. This is a great nose.
Great nose.
This
and
might be
radically
my
different.
this might be my favorite nose.
Let's try it.
Oh, cheers.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off mid-sniff.
Yeah, well, I almost started drinking without cheers. I did not think that this was as acidic and dry. This had a little bit more fruit to it, I thought.
It's a little rounder. I feel
just
like
not-
it has the most tiny, aggressive, consistent bubbles too. I don't think that any of them tasted any more sweet despite the difference in them.
Something about champagne, I'll have one sip and I already feel like tipsy. I don't know if that's like just because it's easy to drink or is that a thing?
So it shouldn't be. Typically,
I don't know. I just get this like warm feeling.
the warm fuzzy feeling is totally a thing.
Yeah.
You can't not have a good time drinking champagne.
I've always thought that champagne, that you couldn't have as big of a difference in champagne as you had in other wines.
Oh, you totally can.
But I think I was proven wrong by this tasting.
Yes.
And Jacques Solos obviously totally proved that wrong.
Yes, that was out there.
That was a different experience altogether. But here's the thing. I think all of these are really, really good. But I don't think the middle two are worth 3x
Times the
the
others.
first. Yeah.
I totally agree.
I'm so glad that you totally agree because these are the ones I want to put on my wine lists. Not that Dom and Roederer don't have their place. They're both delightful champagnes and they can sell themselves. But these guys, I just love the story behind them.
Yeah, if we had like a segment on this as like price matter, I would be like, no. B, what do you feel like? I mean, I think
I think they're all good, but there's just this feeling of holding the Cristal or holding the Dom.
Which is the marketing, and it got to you.
Yeah, it did, and I'll admit to it. But I just want to get my picture holding it or something.
Champagne just feels like they figured out how to sell the glitz. What's your favorite?
Oh yeah, good question.
I can't even choose a favorite because I keep going. I just pick random one, drink it, and it tastes amazing. So let's be real. I'm lucky to just be trying them.
Legitimately, there wasn't a bad one in the bunch.
No.
Sometimes we're like, well, this is my least favorite, and then work back from there. I don't have a least favorite.
Yeah.
For different reasons, they're all great.
As they warm up in the glass, the Dom and the Cristal tasted better when they were colder.
Yes.
I have no explanation for why that is, but it's almost like the complexity of the other two comes out with a little bit of temperature and a little bit of air.
May I hazard a guess as to why I think that is?
Why?
Because these guys know that everyone's drinking these right out of the ice bucket. They are formulated to taste great on ice.
This is a fascinating question then, because how do consumers buy champagne? If there's this much variation from one bottle to the next in terms of flavor profile.
With anything, find a good wine shop. Find somebody who's at that wine shop who you trust and who understands your palate. You picked a great Côte d'Aron for me last week. Help me pick the Gigondas that I'm going to drink. If you like what they did with one sparkling wine, help me pick the next one. I do think that in general, looking at the big house styles is a great way to introduce yourself to champagne.
Well, you can, if you want to try to get to know champagnes on a budget, you can always go to a luxury store, and they normally serve Moet, so you can get that even if you don't buy it.
Oh my gosh, this is so funny. Yeah.
And they're just pouring Moet at LVMH stores all across the Louis Vuitton and a glass of Moet.
Absolutely. All right. Well, B, this has been a lot of fun.
So much fun. I think this might be my top favorite episode.
Who's upset about tasting champagne?
Well, besides the hard seltzer video.
Jeff, do you have any champagne left? Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for watching. Those were all so good.
So good.
I don't think you need to bring the Dom Perignon to the party.
Wait, you said that there wasn't a difference.
Well,
Don't you want the least expensive?
well, I want to take a selfie holding the bottle. No, I'm just kidding.
You should get that done.
You're not kidding at all. What are you talking about?
Cut. I've never sabered champagne.
Well, I have done this before, and it is not super hard. My best recommendations for doing this are make sure the bottle's cold because it lowers the pressure a little bit.
Okay.
So it's easier. You have less chance of it going crazy. Then you're gonna strip the whole neck. Any foil, anything wrapping like that, you wanna take off. And you're looking for the seam on the bottle because the way they form the bottles, there's always a seam on both sides. So here's our seam. Then we're gonna take off our safety net, right? So this is what keeps all of this in and safe, and we're gonna take it off.
Okay.
So as soon as I do that, the party's on. And I'm gonna point it away from you, just
Okay,
in
thank
case
you.
anything horrible happens. And I'm pointing it,
Hold on. I feel like I need to get this on video.
yeah, okay. Any blade will work, although my staff got me a saber for Christmas one year, so I'm gonna use mine. But literally like the back of any blade will totally work. And you're gonna run it up and down the seam. That's where you're gonna go, right? You look at the seam, and you go,
Woo!
So fun.